Yes. Okay. Okay. Introduction. Hi, everybody. It's me again. That guy on YouTube, the weird guy, uh,
Oh,
Jade,
that
I
one.
think, and my buddy Nick. We're gonna talk about Gunbuster. It's this 80s OVA directed by Hideaki Anno that is like absurdly influential, but like nobody talks about, or at
Yeah, these
least,
days.
yeah, these days anyway. Like, I guess more or less in the Western anime community, because most people are more concerned with like what's the newest thing that's coming out, and not necessarily like, okay, in the past, what things had the influence that they did. So yeah, like, as an OVA, Gunbuster is like 6 episodes. It's this tale of a young girl going into space and, making friends and trying to save the Earth while all kinds of crazy, wacky stuff happens with like freaking space aids trying to destroy humanity.
Oh, yeah, we should also preference that we're going to be spoiling a lot of stuff. So if you haven't seen it
Yeah.
and you don't want to get spoiled, then I would say don't watch. But
Yeah,
if
like
you don't, either you don't care or you have, then stick around.
bro, it's like 6 fucking episodes.
I
Like, you
know.
can
So it's like
watch,
no excuse to not watch it.
just watch it, come back. Like, if you have like a ton of time in a day, you could watch the entire thing in one sitting,
Yeah.
or in like the span of 2 days. Like, it's very little effort. um but yeah, please remember to come back to this video because I need the fucking views. Do it. Do it. Come back. But yeah. Yep. Where to go from here? Okay. So in general, Nick, I guess we're gonna want to go into our general thoughts on the whole show. Like, you can start. You can.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll say right off the bat that I goddamn love this show. Like, it's one of those kind of shows that when you watch it, even from the first episode, I would say for me, I was just loving the concept. I loved the animation. I loved how the art style looked. I liked the characters. I just liked the setting. I just like how the whole show was handled and how uh, Hideaki Anno actually was directing the show. He has this sort of style that is very prominent whenever you watch any of his work, and I could see it in here. And this is his first directorial debut too, which is really interesting.
Yeah, man. I didn't even realize that when I first watched it. It was only like it was only like towards the very end, or like towards like one, or towards like the second to last episode or something, that like I realized, oh shit, it's directed by that dude, the man himself,
Mr.
famous
Eva or Ava.
famous Ava guy,
Yeah.
or Shin Godzilla these days.
Yep. Always relating to kaiju, and you can even see that in some ways here.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so even from the first episode, I was really enjoying it. But every episode, as it kept going on, I loved everything that was just like slowly building up on each other. And although the show is only 6 episodes, so it's not like it can go completely far out in every direction, I would say that this show manages to like utilize its time so well that it was able to put the proper amount and like a really solid amount of world building, character development, all that stuff within this small time frame.
Yeah, like, speaking of that, like, one of the things that happened when when I was watching it, right? I remember thinking about it to myself at first, like, oh, there's some gaps here or there, but like, realistically, the amount they're doing with only 6 episodes is pretty fucking impressive. Uh, Like, because if you're
Yeah.
thinking about something that's supposed to be like really long and detailed, like this is not like that. This is not like that. It's like a very tight story where like the core of the story is like mainly what they're focusing on and just trying to bring that out, and it does like a really good job of doing that without
Yeah.
like over focusing on that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I would say that for me, I'll also preface here too that I've watched the show twice now within the span of like a week.
Yeah, it's fucking
Because I
crazy,
mean, that's
man.
essentially watching 12 episodes.
Yeah, it's
So
12 episodes, but
yeah, a
like
normal anime show. It's just I'm rewatching it. But and for both of those times, there was not a moment when I was watching it that I ever got bored or my mind wandered away from the show in a like there's times where I was thinking about the concepts they were talking about, but it wasn't like I started like getting distracted or I was getting bored because there was a slow part or anything. I was constantly like watching it and engaged the whole time. And that to me can like speak volumes for how tightly packed and well paced and everything I felt like the show did. Um, and then there's the concepts that the show was doing. One of the things that I think is really cool to think about is how every single episode is essentially like Noriko like dealing with a certain like part in her life. You got the first episode; she's dealing with being like bullied by people and that stress of having to live up to like your father. Then you have like the second episode where she has to deal with her father's loss again, get reminded of that when she goes out into space. Um, you have the third episode where I think that's the one where she has to deal with like the loss and like what war brings about. Um, and then you
oh yeah,
have
third one, like spoiler. Oh yeah, we already prefaced this. Yeah,
yeah,
it's when somebody who was like kind to her that she was starting to like warm up to just like dies out in space, and like she froze up while it happened. So there's a part of her that kind of feels like, "Oh, I could have done something, but I was weak in that moment." And it's like it's the episode that where she's like really inspired to kind of start doing something about,
yeah.
that.
She takes in her failure and this kind of like insecurity about it to try to better herself.
Yeah.
And then you have the fourth episode in which she has to be willing to put her life on the line and think about the concept of her dying out there. And then you had the fifth and the sixth episode, which are a little bit more like connected with the same concept, and that's the whole dealing with the passing of time mechanic that this anime decides to like go
Yeah.
into in terms of
Yeah, it's light
actually sticking
speed.
behind the light
Yeah.
speed time difference. Yeah, and her having to stay the same age. Well, the whole world and everybody else she knew is growing much older, and she's like gonna outlive them, and like kind of that stress and isolation and all that.
Oh yeah, like you see her and her friend Kimiko, and just the difference in how they behave, as Kimiko is like 27 and she's still like a freaking teenager, and just the idea of like, oh, you're so close to this person like in the day back in the day and stuff, and now they've matured in a way, but you're still stuck in like a time from like far before.
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
mentally like conflicting that must feel to talk to somebody and have them have like 20 years of experience gone by. Well, it's only been a few months for you, and like how
Yeah.
disconnected you feel and how alienated you now feel towards everybody. Um, and that was like one of the things she said when she came back, and like she was wondering how her father must have felt whenever he came back and how alone he must have been with
Yeah.
dealing the world and stuff. So
Yeah, like puts things into perspective with her dad. Like, and like think about it for and when you think about it for a second, you realize like with the amount of time that actually passes, and he came back every year, so it must have been like a snap of his finger, like every single time, like, oh, he's coming back, and it's a year pass again, a year pass again, a year pass. It's
yeah,
basically like you're watching somebody grow up in like fast forward. And and yeah, it's over. Yeah, it puts everything kind of just feeds into itself and builds on itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll let you talk because I don't want to be just, going off
Yeah.
myself the whole time. But yeah,
Mr. Nick, the Gunbuster,
I just
fanboy.
absolutely love it. Yeah.
I get it. Like for me, early on when I first watched it, because everybody's like, "Oh, man, so freaking great, so great, watch it." Like, there's a part of me, like let's call it hipster Jade, is just like, really now. So yeah, I started watching the show. And I was like, hey, initially I was like, oh, it's fun. It's fun, but like my mind wasn't blown. But it's one of those things. Oh man, how do I describe it? It reminds me of this one Pro ZD, or if you've seen that
I
YouTuber,
know.
like it
Yeah.
reminds me of this one skit of him like watching Haikyuu, and it starts out in the beginning with him being like, yeah,
Oh,
sports
yes.
anime,
Yes.
whatever, who fucking cares? And then by the end, he's like in tears over the fucking that was me, basically.
Yeah. It's like episode 1, you're just like, oh, yeah, everything's cool and everything. At the end of it, you're just like, yeah, Noriko! Yeah, rip your shirt off and use the bomb to blow up the universe. Yeah.
Yeah. This anime goes from like 0 to 100 because everything starts out relatively like it feels extremely plausible as far as like future technology, and then everything kind of just advances in its own way as the years go on, and by the end you end up with like this like Star Trek age technology type shit where
oh god,
yeah, and how like freaking cool it is towards the end, just seeing everything just kind of grow and evolve, which is like a main theme of Gunbuster, is like that idea of growing and stuff. Like the ending theme of the show has the one line that I remember, power up and stuff like that, and is having like little like pictures of Noriko doing push-ups and running around, which arguably like the whole idea of like physical training is like a thematic like point, is like, or a point of like thematic importance throughout the entire show, because remember they do shit like do push-ups in like robots and shit.
Yeah.
like I remember seeing
I thought that was hilarious as soon as the first episode starts, and you just see robots doing push-ups and like
that was one of my big questions when I first started the show, like, why are they doing push-ups in robots? But I'm like, okay, now I think I kind of get it, with how like the whole idea of like becoming better at something and growing stronger is like a core idea throughout the show.
Yeah. But yeah, I was gonna add on to your point with the whole world building and stuff, and yeah, like this show is so great because there is a certain realism to some of the technology and some of what they're like talking about, and they try to implement like scientific terms or scientific like ideas into its show, but then it will also go off the deep end and then talk about alien concepts like giant space creatures that are like essentially antibodies trying to take out bacteria, and then you have in the very end of the show where they make a black hole bomb out of shrinking Jupiter.
Yeah, like they put the entire planet inside of a freaking bomb, and they use that to blow up, which is interesting. Which is interesting to think about, because if you actually know, because I remember like doing some research like back in the day on like gas giants and how they work. Like gas giants, if to get to the core of a gas giant, like requires it requires the ability to like withstand an absurd amount of pressure and heat, which is what like they did at the end. They just fucking flew down to like they went into the planet and flew down into into it and like made it to the fucking core,
And the
which is
whole
fucking
Gunbuster just
insane.
like lost all of its abilities. Like all it could do was move now.
Yeah,
Everything
it's
just
like,
got destroyed.
yep. Yeah. And towards the end where like everybody's like, "Oh yeah, you guys are fucking dead." And they're like, "No, we're not dead. We ain't dead. We're going to make it." But yeah, kind of off the deep end, especially if you haven't seen the show. Like, then it'd be like,
Yeah.
which I don't know why you're still here if you haven't seen the show. I said to go watch
let's just
it.
at this point we'll just assume that anybody's watching now has seen it because
Yeah.
no excuse now. The show came out in 1988. You should all watch it.
Yeah.
It's also
Yeah.
we've also talked about it's also super influential. So just do it.
Just do it. Do it. Do what must be done. Okay. So this show is pretty freaking influential as far as like Gainax and trigger stuff is concerned. As like, if you've watched Gurren Lagann, which is like a pretty big fucking deal.
I would say that's one of the most popular Gainax shows, other than Neon Genesis. Like probably those two are like top
those
tier.
two are top tier. Like obviously because Eva was also directed by Hideaki Anno. There's a lot of like there's a lot of like shit in Gunbuster that you could argue is feels like the prelude to what would become stuff you'd see in Eva.
Mm-hmm. Like straight down to the aliens themselves.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a very big precursor to the angels because it's kind of this giant entity that's just hell-bent on destroying, and we can't understand it because it's completely an alien concept, which I always love because I think that's like a fascinating idea of dealing with this massive amount of dread that you can't control or negotiate with because it's literally just like completely foreign.
And
then,
but yeah, like
other elements too.
Yeah. And then with like Gurren Lagann, like if you just look at the design of like Gunbuster, like the Gunbuster, like, mech in general, that has very fucking like, it feels very Gurren Lagann. Like piloted by two people. Like when it fucking flies, it has arm fucking crossed in this badass pose. And it has a ton of like epic, like, firepower. Like the interesting thing here for you fucking like Gundam fans, right? Real quick, if you've ever seen G Gundam, like that entire show, like the mechs in that show are piloted with like free hand, where the person's like in kind of like a room or space, and they're like moving their body to move the robot. Gunbuster came out before that and does that, so you could also argue that there's some influence going on there. I just thought of that, and
I always thought the idea of like having the person physically move along with the mech is something that's usually not always done. And this is one of those early examples to show that it like there is an older show that did it, and it probably helped kind of spur that idea in a lot of creators down the line to make it so it felt more like grandiose when the people moved along with the mech because it feels like they're one with it.
Yep. Overall, like Gunbuster, it's just a really fucking fun time of a show. It doesn't take that long to watch, and it's like it's a pretty important part of like mecha history, as it's like considered to be one of the greatest OVAs of all time, I think.
Definitely one of the biggest in terms of like how much like impact it had for just being a very short series. It's not like this big 100 episode franchise or something. It's just a 6 episode OVA series by a studio that I don't know. Actually, I don't know if this is like one of Gainax's first productions. I'm not sure.
It shouldn't be. I remember they.
Well, I'm talking about like actually like going like long episode lengths and not just being very short stuff.
I am not fucking sure. Like,
Well, regardless, I would say it's still earlier on in their
yeah, definitely early on.
so the fact that they were able to make something with such high-end animation and with such impact, um, and then it really just gave their name, like put their name out there, and just like, whoa, look at this studio.
Yeah. Also, one of the things that I guess kind of made me go, "Oh man, this is great," is just the feeling of outright nostalgia I get when watching this show, because I remember in the early 2000s, or like when I was a little kid watching anime, there was a lot of stuff from like the 90s, and like, and even like stuff like Dragon Ball, which came out in like the 80s and stuff, which was on like TV, and I would really heavily enjoy like fucking watching stuff like that, especially stuff like I remember back in the day watching like the Rama one half anime too, and things like that. Like, it's extremely refreshing to do so, especially after like years of just, watching new stuff and kind of feeling
Yeah.
just kind of sick and tired of it,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to like, go back. We have to go back, like, it feels nice. That's a big part of like
Yeah,
one of the
watching
things I
Gunbuster
appreciate.
these days is such a good way to get a refresher of how anime was seen and handled back then, back
Yeah.
in the late 80s. When like the whole otaku craze and everything was starting to build, what kind of spurred on today's anime community and concepts and stuff. You
Yeah.
get to really see the birth of that, and it's really fascinating to see how different it is, but also similar in ways it is, and what it's kind of led to.
Yeah, it's also a fucking mecha. And how long has it been since we've seen one of
Yeah.
those? Like, fuck. Like,
Probably the
I
last
feel
one that last one I could think of, other than Darling, is like a Gundam. Was it Gundam Iron Blood Orphans?
Iron Blooded Orphans was like the only other Gundam that's come out in like a while.
Yeah,
And yeah, and like Darling. Yeah, like, fuck. I feel so fucking sorry for mecha fans, because like they're being like blue balled so fucking hard
yeah,
nowadays, and I feel like it's not even that like making a mecha show would be unprofitable. Like, I think I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm like, man, I do kind of miss mecha shows now that I've like gone back and watched some stuff like this.
yeah. At first, I was gonna be like, oh, maybe the reason why is because it's hard to fit something like that in a 12 episode series. But then I immediately am like, wait, we're talking about Gunbuster, which did it in 6 episodes. Uh, I don't know. Maybe it's just because with mecha series, you just have to like. At least whenever I watch a mecha, I always feel like there's this gigantic world to go along with it. So you really have to put that much kind of dedication and world building in a concept that might not even sell very well, because you have
Yeah.
to do within a seasonal based time
Oh
frame.
shit. Yeah.
When you
It's
compare that to
basically
like,
too much work, man.
yeah, well, I mean, you like compare that to how many different Gundams there are, and how they were generally able to go for like 50 episodes, and then you have like Macross, which also has like 30 something episodes for its first, but then the later series have like bunch of episodes, so they have all that like time to kind of like devolve into and get out all these concepts that they're trying to show off. But these days it would probably be a lot harder.
Oh yeah, especially since like anime has just progressively gotten like shorter over the years. Like, like the formula now is to like make it everything in like 12 episode bursts and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, a lot of people, including myself, like, I miss fucking 26 episode shows. I never thought I'd be fucking saying that like back in the day. Like, but like, man, I do miss that shit, because 12 episodes is not fucking enough for every goddamn show to
No.
have a completely fleshed out like concept and and stuff going on, right?
Gridman.
Like, yeah, exactly. Gridman like is
Gridman
one is
so
one
needed
show that
more.
like, yeah, it's one of those shows that suffered because of that. And like, there's a lot of fucking shows that'll come out and they'll have this premise that does not feel like it should be for a 12 episode show, and it's such a freaking shame. Um, but yeah, like there definitely is there definitely is this like push towards making more shorter productions and like not having and not like kind of doing what works and not taking risks
Yeah.
in general, and that you could also tie into just the general attitude of how people interact with anime and how anime as a medium has changed over the years, because everything's a lot more like mass produced now,
Mm-hmm.
which like you get a lot more shows, but like most of them are like either average or just
Like there's usually probably like two series, maybe three per season that are actually fairly good, while the rest are pretty average to schlock. And there's how many shows per season? Per season, probably like what, 12
like
or something?
60, like fucking 60 shows a season.
Yeah, I mean,
it's absurd
it's probably
amount.
more ridiculous. Yeah,
and it's like, and people wonder why we're having like this animator shortage on top of that. Like, there's an absurd amount of shows being made, and just a lack of also financial incentive, because like, you know, there's a lot of anime being made. Most of it doesn't make any fucking money, and like, yeah.
Well, it's like most of the money they make is just advertising whatever they're adapting. If it's a light novel, they're literally just advertising that series, so people will more than likely read the books, which gets them money that way. And it's almost, to me, that just screams out like, I feel like we almost need to focus on having a couple studios do animes still, like traditional TV animes, and then other studios focus more on OVAs or movie type like ideas. And then if they become big enough, then spur them up into like this big TV show or something that gets along like such a longer running time.
Here's the thing, Nick. Like, one of the things I've heard along the lines, and this is a really interesting theory, and I actually like it, is the whole concept of like, there are people who want to like get into the anime industry now, and like the whole idea is that like the anime as a whole, like if anime as a whole were to like go for a model that is more sustainable, like the whole idea of trying to put out like a really high quality product, trying to like Kyo Annie, or even like, you know, trigger it or something like that, where, you know, they're not making a lot of stuff, but they're working on like a really high quality product, then then the entire industry would have to shrink to like to like, you know, to like work with that, right? Less people would get hired. Only like the best, or like only if the really good people would get hired. And that's a thing like people point out with like studios like Kyoto Animation and stuff, who don't make that many shows, but when they do, like it's like a really fucking good thing. It's like they have people, the people they have there are like really fucking talented. So like there's gonna be a lot of people who are not, like, if we like make the shift over, there's gonna be a lot of people who are not gonna be able to like work in the industry like before, which may be for the best.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like it's a give or take, because it could be for the best, because it could make the quality of anime improve while just lowering the quantity. But at the same time, it also could it would like also lead to even more shortages of animators and stuff, because it would be so competitive, I feel like. And it's already lessening as is already, and the, you know, the quality of living for an animator is so shit right now anyway in Japan.
Yeah,
so
unless you work for like Kyoto Animation.
Yeah, unless you work for the really good studios where they actually like compensate their workers very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're working for some, well, I'm not in the know on like the really egregious studios, but like unless you work for one of those, then it's kind of like which is like I feel like is like most animators, which is why most people don't want to like. Which is why there's the animator shortage. There's just not like there's no money in it, and people are like, oh, I'm not gonna fucking live paycheck to paycheck just to do this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
back to Gunbuster.
yeah, we went on this whole fucking time.
Well,
yeah,
it relates because Gunbuster is a shorter series and it has like this big impact for being a shorter, more concise series. So it fits in a way.
All right, best girl of the show.
Do you want to go first or me?
Like, yeah, I'll go first. Oh, best girl of the show is like obviously Coach, man.
Coach,
like he is the realest motherfucker in the entire goddamn show. Like all the girls in the show are freaking wet for this guy. He just shows up and just yells and everybody gets stronger. Like even when he was dying, he still looked like a freaking badass. It's like
yeah, because he got to slap fucking One-sama beforehand.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, he's just Coach. Yeah, he's awesome. But like in all seriousness now, I feel like everybody who watches the show like fucking loves the shit out of Noriko, because
like me.
Yeah, like everybody's like, oh, she's so cute. Oh man, look at all the stuff she's doing. Which initially, like, I wasn't like overly a fan of her, but she grew on me over time, like the show. So I do like her, but it's also kind of I feel like I like all the girls in a way.
Yeah, they all have something about them that's fun and interesting about them. I would say.
Let's not forget to talk about like the fucking full frontal nudity in this show.
Yeah, this is the 80s, man. They're allowed to show boobies. It's also an OVA, so yeah. But I mean, then you also have something like Gundam, where they like OG Gundam from '79, and that fucking had titties.
Oh so,
yeah,
yeah. Like back in the day when like you could actually show titties and people wouldn't flip their shit. Like there's just a scene, and it's just there. By the way, it's not even like oh look, maybe it'll show the titties. It's like nope, it's just in your face. Like it's just they cut in I think episode 2 or is it 3? Like I'm pretty sure it was like 2 or something.
It was episode 2.
Yeah,
that was the bath scene.
Yeah, they just cut to the bath scene where their titties are just there. And you're like, oh yeah.
But it's also like it's just natural. It's not like it's completely being played up for like, oh my god, look, fan service.
Yeah, like it's it's just there. It's just there. Like there's no like pretense behind it. There's no tee look at this. Oh, it's a hot spring scene. You know.
Let me get those low angle shots. Ooh, right up there. Yeah. No, they're actually like straightforward shots.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there should be like porno music playing in the background. Yeah. It's just a bath scene. Yeah.
No, but who is your favorite girl then?
Nick's like, oh, but seriously though.
No, but seriously, man, you gotta answer this. Fuck everything else we've said so far. This is the most important question.
Let's see. Let us see.
I mean, if you don't have one, that's fine. I was just curious.
Yeah, like I know it's gonna be like kind of weird since everybody loves to be like, oh, you have to fucking pick one. You have to fucking pick one. I'm like, man, I don't think I have like a favorite girl. Like to me, it's like none of them like really go above each other too much to the point where I would be like, oh, this one I would ride or die for this one, for this girl, right? They all have something about them that I like. And so it would be like if I was Shinji and it was an End of Ava or something, the girl who was sitting beside me, just like in End of Ava, it would be like a weird mix mash and combination of those like three girls, like where it's like the things I like about them the most would
Oh
just kind of
yeah.
be compiled into one woman.
Mhm.
That's how I feel like it would be for me, where like there's something I like about all of them, where it's like I feel like a harem protagonist. I can't make up my mind.
Oh yeah. I love you. I love you. I love you. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't make me decide.
I don't want to make a choice. Oh man. Yep.
But to defend my pick though for why I like Noriko more, I mean, there is this point that she's the main character, so she's like the most prominent, and I think she has the most character growth, at least what that's shown. But other than that, the other reasons I really like her is just because of kind of the growth that she has to go to, and I also liked her base personality. Like she's just a kind of a typical normal girl, but she has energy. She has a goal she wants to strive for. Even if, she's kind of out of her element in terms of the fact that she's completely fresh and she feels like she's getting all of these things given to her, even though she doesn't deserve it yet.
Yeah.
But then as it goes, you see her face like trauma after trauma, and it just continues to kind of build up her character to the point where when she finally does kind of use the Gunbusters and fight it, it feels It feels rewarding because it feels like you've been building up, and that she's had to go through all of the crying, the loss, the remembrance, and then when that finally happens, it feels like that good final step to really much push her into what she was trying to go towards and kind of living up to her name of her dad in a way. And then the other two episodes, they don't like make her completely emotionless, cool, badass bitch now. She's still her, which is also really great. Not what I love about how they handled her. She's still her same old kind of personality in person. It's just now she has the guts and willingness to kind of fight and put everything on the line.
Yeah, they didn't fucking marvel it. They actually made that. I was just considering in my head now that like the way the show is written, and I think this is probably because of Hideaki Anno as director, right? The way the show is like made, everything there feels so fucking natural. Like it feels like you're actually watching like real people at times, like the way they interact and stuff. Like there's never this feeling of, oh, this is just really, unless it's like the really over the top aspects of the show, like with stuff with giant robots and like aliens and shit. But like outside of that, when you're dealing with just the people, right? It's like I feel it feels realistic in a sense of, oh, they're behaving in this way because like you can rationalize or like imagine, okay, this is why they're doing the things they're doing, right? It's not, they don't necessarily always do like the right thing, or they might be like, or there might be something like a little, wonky about them at times, but that's just because they're like human beings and they're not perfect and stuff. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. And I love what you just said about them not like basically making Noriko into this fucking alpha bitch, crazy, beats the shit out of everything. Oh, I don't take shit from nobody. Like superwoman person.
Yeah, like I'm not a crybaby girl anymore. I'm just like, I'm badass.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like some shit you'd see in a Western film circa 2019 now. Like not trying to be all fucking, not trying to get all weird on y'all, but like I feel I feel like this is one of the major things I like about Japanese media recently, especially now when I compare it to like Western stuff, is like even like is this it's just that they don't feel this need that they don't feel this need at times to like overcompensate for the fact that oh Noriko's a girl or whatever. Like they just is like, oh yeah, she can be fucking like badass and get into like the position, get into her role and do crazy shit. But at the end of the day, she's still a girl who, like, even though so much time has passed on Earth, she might as well have just been like fresh out of high school, and hasn't really like grown as far as physically, or hasn't really experienced, as far as her own perception of time is concerned, hasn't really experienced an absurd amount of things. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah,
So yeah,
even though she goes through this character growth of becoming stronger and standing up and facing the challenges head on, she's still her same old,
yeah,
likes to be happy, is a bit quirky, um and it, like, as they've kind of shown in the background but isn't like prominent. And I remember what was it? I think it was some of the extra stuff that was talking about this. But she's essentially like they've like said in some interviews and other like talking about it, that she's essentially like this kind of space otaku. Like she loves like
yeah,
sci-fi stuff and
yeah.
all
That
these
was the
little
thing
nerdy
that
things.
really that I really love that of like
Yeah.
that little character detail, and you can see that in the actual main show, where when you're inside a room and you can see all these posters for like stuff like My Neighbor Totoro and like Nazca of the Valley of the Wind, and like even stuff like 80s rock bands and all this like thing, all these little things that kind of point you in that direction. But yeah, sorry for cutting you off, Nick. Keep going.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's what I like, is that she can still be her girl self in terms of just liking the things that she likes and being a bit more like happy, shy, all these traits that kind of made her as she was, but still be able to, in the final episode, decide to essentially like lose the rest of the life she'll have with her present people and friends and everybody on Earth, just to save the universe from this almighty threat. She can
Yeah,
make these big, hard, like what we'd see as like this badass heroic decisions, but still be who she is.
yeah, because she's emotionally mature,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
So those
And
are all the reasons for why I really like her and why she
yeah,
just sticks out to me, because she's, in my opinion, such a great character and a good reminder of, like, this is a character that's fairly old for nowadays standards, but is still such a great example for how you can do a main character, especially a female main character, well.
yeah, yeah, most definitely. Like I feel like, again, harping on this whole point again, but I feel like there definitely needs to be some like looking back in the past and like examining what made certain things amazing, for like future stuff to come, instead of like, this constant pushing forward into whatever and whichever direction. I definitely feel like Gunbuster is one of those things that really, I feel like if you had like if I was a professor of animeology in like a college, I would definitely have this be like I definitely have this be like, oh, what, have it be like a major assignment, like, oh yeah, watch Gunbuster and write a fucking, give me a 10-page paper on like what made it freaking great.
Write me a
Um,
10-page paper on why Noriko's waifu. Go.
yes, it's like, okay, Professor Nick.
Where do I even begin?
Yeah, but yeah, that's the basic general gist of Gunbuster. It's a freaking great OVA, a legendary OVA, in
Yeah.
fact. And
I mean, there's a lot I could still talk about in terms of like its visuals. Oh, we haven't even talked about how great the music is. I love the
oh yeah,
soundtrack for this series because it's like this.
very very 80s
Oh yeah,
feeling.
but it also has this sort of orchestral feel to it in a way too, in terms of like being so bombastic,
Uh,
and it doesn't feel like it's like completely synthesized or something. Like this reminds me of what a lot of other mecha shows were doing at the time. I just loved how this show was doing it in particular.
mm,
Like a lot of the tracks like stick out to me heavily. Like when you have the Gunbuster, it has its own track. When you have
oh
the
yeah,
one episode where One-sama or Amano and Noriko working together in like that big first battle. Like, well, what was seen at first was the final battle in episode 5, but where they had to work together to unleash that one bomb,
yeah.
the ship, I should say. So, and that had its own track for that big scene too. And you have all those kind of moments that are emphasized because of the fantastic music. And then the animation itself.
Oh yeah,
One of the
very
things I
clean.
love is that when they're in space, they do this kind of shaded look for the mechs, and they even do this like when they're on Earth and stuff too. But they give it like these. There's so many different shots of when they show the mechs, they have like this shaded look to them, and it makes it just seem like they legit are in space, and it's
Mm.
just got this cool look to it. And that's probably just due to the fact that it's an OVA series and it's by Gainax, and it's not just a TV show.
Mm.
So it like because there's sometimes because I haven't watched that many mecha shows, I should probably state, but the ones I have seen are older, and while I enjoy them, you can definitely tell at times that they had to deal with the TV budget, and not every action scene can look the best. Like, oh my god, this is amazing. Sometimes it looks pretty like janky and
Oh,
cheap. But then you watch something
Gundam
like this,
79.
and you're just like, oh my god, all these scenes look just so good, and just look how the robots look in space. So
Yeah,
that's
but
why I just felt a need to
yeah,
like point
like
it
there's
out.
some scenes that were so fucking like clean to watch just because of, again, like the amount of work they put into it. And like it got to the point where I was watching the scene where the gun buster was coming together, like because it's as a robot it can like separate into two, like, separate flying units, and it like comes together and stuff, where there's this big transformation scene with like Noriko and her Onesama, you know,
Yeah,
kind of like combining together, right? And the scene was so fucking clean that my while I was watching it, my freaking the video started fucking buffering. It's like it was too powerful for it to handle. So
oh
yeah, and
man, this is taking
yeah.
too much space. Gotta give me a second.
Yeah, you could argue that also, like, again, you could argue that this is also stuff in that like inspired other things in like Gurren Lagann. Like if you think of stuff like, Simone and Kamina, how Simone is always calling Kamina big bro, and
Yeah,
their robots combine and shit like that. Um, yeah, yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, it's like I love, again, like I said, like I love the way it looks, like from a very biased standpoint, because it reminds me of my childhood and like watching older anime and stuff.
yeah. And then you
So
have my perspective where I don't have a lot of it, and I watch this and I just love it regardless. So I feel like it could happen both ways. You don't have to
yeah,
relate
you
it
don't
to
have to be
everything
like
else.
me, but
Yeah,
like,
you could. Well, I mean, you could just straight up watch it, enjoy it, but then you can also have a perspective like yours, where you base it off of what you've seen. You can really see what's been inspired because of it, and that's what I think is so great. Another point that's just so great about it.
yeah, yeah. Um, phew. How about those space age? The giant monsters. Yeah, like that
Don't you mean
thing.
those giant white blood cells?
Yeah, like the weird. Oh my god, I remember the fucking scene where the guy was like, where the professor guy was like, "I believe they're trying to destroy humanity. Like they're trying to take out humanity like a virus. Think about it. Does humanity have any greater purpose in the universe?" And I immediately had the same reaction as the captain, where I was just like, "The fuck you talking about?" and like and like over the course of the story, it was like, oh yeah, it that might be the case, but I think a big part of like the appeal of it is like you don't really know. It's
Yeah.
just a theory as to like what these things are and why they're so intent on killing humans and stuff. Like we don't really understand like the full reason behind it. So there's kind of a mystery there. And it's just like, okay, like, yeah, we don't know, but we don't have to know. All we know, all we have to really understand is that we want to survive. So we're gonna do what we have to do to survive, even if that means blowing up our own galaxy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, although there isn't like a lot of detail as to what the hell is going on with them, I think that's to the benefit, and I think it's generally how you like makes more sense to look at it that way. Is that
Yeah.
the reason they're so terrifying and the reason there is so much dread that comes from them is because we don't know what the fuck the actual reason behind them is.
Yeah. At first, I was also a little bit like again, I had a reaction of the captain, but also thinking about like this thing and what it's capable of. Like when you first see it, it pops out of a fucking star, and you're just like I'm thinking about just how absurdly insane that is for a living life form to be able to survive being inside of a freaking star, right? And yeah, it's freaking crazy. So I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of a mystery. It adds to that mysterious element, right? Like a being that can do all this fucking weird, crazy shit. They can survive in the vacuum of space and move at light speed too. So that's another thing where you're just like, what kind of creature would evolve to have all these characteristics? And yeah, it kind of lends credence to like maybe these things are like, generated by the galaxy itself. It might be because they're just so fucking insane, or it could be something else. You never know.
Yeah. I just loved when that whole concept came up with the whole idea of like, I mean, like when you think about it, the galaxy is the universe is so large that we're just a very small speck in the like grand scheme of everything. So the idea of like, oh, maybe there's these weird life forms that go around that are like essentially the antibodies of the universe, cleaning up any sort of strange bacteria that might like spread and like affect the other parts of the universe is like a really crazy, but like, wow, like, man, like what if that was actually true and stuff going on? Concept.
Yeah, it reminds as a concept. It reminds me of something like the Reapers from Mass Effect.
Oh
Where it's like,
yes, yes.
yeah, where it's like this ancient thing that just shows up and wipes out civilizations that becomes advanced enough and steals their technology. So it has this horrifying feeling to it when this thing shows up, and then you don't know everything about it. You just know it's fucking terrifying and it wants to kill everybody.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing I should ask is, what do you think about the whole finale scene? And when the fact that they come back 10,000 some years later,
Yeah,
and when they arrive back on the planet,
yeah, that's a real freaking like head spinner right there.
yeah.
Like where you're just like, you have the final battle, which I freaking love because it's a sketchy black and white. Like,
Well, that's one of the cool things about the final episode is it's all black and white.
Yeah. It's this really just this epic freaking battle, and you don't get to see like all of it. It was like a montage, but but it makes sense because the entire episode, the whole implication of it is that this was a fucking long battle. This was a long fucking fight, and like after it was over, like even then it's like the whole idea of, in order to like actually do what you have to do and like finish things off, Noriko and her and her best Onesan have to like basically sacrifice their time, the time they had on Earth, or like the time they had in their own time period, to save everybody. And it's the whole idea of like, them coming back to Earth and them wondering like, oh, was it all in vain? And then towards the end, you see the freaking like the letters light up in the sky. That's like welcome back, and you see like, oh, this was planned. Where and
Yeah.
you're at first I thought, oh man, how did they know? And then it's like when then I thought, hey, when you think about it, like if you think about it from the perspective of like, oh, time moving faster, it's possible they developed the technology enough to actually like, maybe like telescopes or like some kind of like space scanning technology to where they could actually like see them from Earth and like go, oh, there they are, like, and just plan this entire thing out. Because the way light works is the way it works or whatnot is like the whole idea of like, okay, like traveling from Earth from like a very long fucking distance away, like you're not getting like everything you're seeing in the night sky or like from Earth or like from a close distance, or what we can see with our eyes, is only like it's only shit and only light that took like millions of years to get here, right?
Hmm.
So we're only seeing stuff from the past. But if they invented some kind of telescope or some kind of device that allowed them to like see like extremely far out into the galaxy, it would be possible for them to spot them and anticipate when they would show up. So like we don't actually get like a concrete explanation, but that's not like the important part. The important part is like, they got back to Earth, and even like, it's been thousands of years, and everybody and the people, and the people there are like welcoming them back. And it's the whole idea of, oh, it wasn't all in vain. They did save humanity and like the world as they know it.
Hmm. Yeah, because there is an interesting point that somebody brought up when they were talking about that scene. Because I watched a video that kind of where one guy was talking about this a little bit, and one of the things his perspective was when it came to the final episode is that there was kind of this like air of creepiness to the ending, and in the idea of the fact that it's been 10,000 years, so what the hell's the Earth gonna be like? What's going on? Is humanity still there? Is the world completely different? All this stuff. And then, like, to him, he sees, like, the ending as kind of this, like, really mysterious kind of ending. And something he pointed out that I didn't even notice is that if you actually look at the Japanese letters that show up for Welcome Back, some of them are, like, opposite. They're flipped. Like, it doesn't actually spell out completely right, welcome back. Like, some of them are kind of flipped so they look wrong. So it's kind of that idea of, oh, maybe, like, oh, what the hell does that mean? Like, why is it spelled wrong or whatever? And even though I'm not completely like, oh, maybe it's just, oh, like, really creepy. I think it's an interesting kind of perspective to have, because it really does lend itself to being, like, really bizarre to think about, and also like, oh man, what could like this outcome mean? Or it just makes your mind wander with the whole ending, and because it doesn't actually go into it, you can just kind of think about it, which
Yeah,
I think
like
is
I
really
get
powerful and
that's
interesting
a
about it.
really interesting way to look at it, because in my head, I'm like, I have a very optimistic look of everything, but like I have a very optimistic look of everything, whereas
Yeah.
like the person's like, oh, what could happen here? What's going on? Well, I mean, it's only been like, well, given my limitless knowledge of evolution and human resources and whatever, blah blah blah, right? I know like 10,000 years isn't enough for like humanity to have changed a lot, right, or anything like that. So like I highly doubt it's like, Noriko and, Big Sis show up on Earth and everybody's like bird people or some shit like that. I highly doubt it's like that. Like, I highly doubt it's anything like that. It's probably that it's been so long that writing itself has just changed, and they're trying to like, it could be like
harken back to Japanese.
Yeah, they're trying to like write it in a way that like they'll understand, like to where like, writing has just changed and they're trying to like rewrite it in a way that like in the way they'll understand, but like they probably fucked something up. It could be just that. But yeah, like there's an air of mystery to it because you don't know what happened, but you can see, like in the ending I saw, you can see what the planet looks like now. And there's a ton of like interconnected like bridges everywhere. Like you can see kind of like you can see a ton of machinery from like, well, not machinery, but like what looks like almost like highways or like interconnected like pathways that like lead across the planet. So it's like, things have become a lot more technologically advanced, but like you can't 100%, you don't 100% know like what everything's like. But the whole idea is, again, like they fucking saved humanity.
Yeah.
Right? They saved their own like kind and their own like species. They made a sacrifice and it did pay off. And the whole point is like, oh, just don't think about it too much, right? Just don't think about it. Think about it, but don't like, but also like, it's not important, like the details of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting. It's such a kind of open ending that you could really speculate as to what happens until you watch Gunbuster 2, which actually does kind of go into like.
I was gonna ask about that, where it's like, oh yeah, Gunbuster.
Yeah,
2
Gunbuster 2 essentially takes place in that kind of time area, which is why that show is so fucking bizarre. Because I remember when I watched it, for some reason I forgot it was 10,000 years, and I only thought it was 1,000. And I was just like, man, this is really strange. But then when I think about 10,000 years, I'm like, okay, that's even more ludicrous. So maybe this shit could exist, but whatever. It's yeah, that's something a different topic for a different day. But yeah, essentially, Gunbuster 2 kind of does like
go into
play off it does try to provide more answers for that, what the world is, and what they kind of hinted at. And that could be for better or for worse, depending on whoever watches it and kind of likes what they did or dislikes what they did.
I know Nick was like, oh, I'm not feeling this. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet. But yeah, yeah. yeah. And
yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I really want to shill on it right now.
Yeah, like I feel like the video is long enough as it is.
Yeah.
So let's like close it out now, especially since like I can see Glory in the chat being like, oh, we got making a video. Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay.
Overall, Gunbusters is a fantastic anime. It's already risen into like one of my personal favorites now. Yeah, everybody should watch it, and if you've watched it, watch it again, please, because it's worth it.
Oh damn! Like, yeah, it's a fun show, extremely influential. I feel like if you're trying to do like an anime crash course, like learning knowledge type thing, it definitely should be on your list of like old stuff to watch. It'll make you more cultured, and like you'll be able to walk into like cons and stuff and be like, huh, I bet you nerds haven't even watched Gunbuster. And stuff like that. It'll give you
Is that a spin-off of Gurren Lagann?
Yeah. Yeah, you'll get all kinds of mad fucking street cred. But yeah, that's all we gotta say. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Toodles.
Say bye, Nick. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Later.